Stop for a moment. Not to think, not to plan, just to notice. There is a quiet intelligence moving through your life right now. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain itself. Yet, when you stop resisting, you can feel it gently rearranging things you thought were stuck forever. You may believe nothing is working because you can't see results yet, but alignment begins invisibly. Just like healing, it starts beneath the surface. What feels like delay is often life-adjusting details you haven't considered but will soon be grateful for. Most people struggle because they push against the moment they're in. They argue with reality. They tense their bodies and demand answers. But the law I want to show you does not respond to force. It responds to cooperation. Think about the times you tried to control every outcome, how tight your chest felt, how exhausted your mind became. That tension is not effort, it's resistance. And resistance slows the very help you're asking for. Here is the truth few are taught. Life organizes itself around your inner state. When your thoughts soften, when self-blame quiets, when you stop treating yourself as a problem to fix, the outer world begins to shift without struggle. This doesn't mean you pretend everything is fine. It means you stop fighting what is. The moment you make peace with where you are, movement begins. Support finds you. Solutions approach quietly, without announcement. There is a cost to ignoring this law. When you stay locked in fear, the same patterns repeat, the same delays, the same frustration. But when you choose trust even a little, the pattern breaks. Something new is allowed to enter. Listen carefully now. Your body already knows this law. When you relax, your breath deepens. When you trust, your shoulders drop. The body aligns before the mind understands, and life follows the body's signal. You may be wondering, how long will this take? That question comes from impatience, not truth. Alignment is not slow, it's precise. It happens the moment you stop pushing and start allowing. Stay here with me. Let the need to control soften. You don't have to manage the whole picture. There is an order greater than effort, a rhythm kinder than force, and it is already working. This is not coincidence. This is not luck. This is law. And when you learn how to live in harmony with it, you will discover something deeply comforting. Everything is aligning even now. I wish to begin by directing your attention to a truth so simple that it is often dismissed, yet so powerful that when once understood, it quietly rearranges an entire life. There exists an invisible order governing all visible results. This order does not announce itself, nor does it respond to pleading or force. It operates whether one believes in it or not, and it reveals itself only through its effects. Men who learn to recognize this order early save years of confusion, struggle, and wasted effort. Men who resist it spend their lives correcting the same mistakes under different names. Most people believe that life is shaped primarily by outward effort. They assume that if they push hard enough, plan carefully enough, or worry long enough, results must eventually appear. When results do not appear, they conclude that something is wrong with themselves, with others, or with life itself. Rarely do they consider that they may be working against an order that requires cooperation rather than command. This invisible order operates long before events become visible. Every circumstance that later appears in form begins first as arrangement. Decisions are influenced, conditions are prepared, timing is refined. None of this can be seen by the eye, trained only to look for immediate proof. This is why impatience is so costly. It interrupts processes that are already in motion but not yet complete. I have observed that men who achieved enduring success were distinguished not by frantic effort, but by an unusual calm during periods when nothing appeared to be happening. They trusted that preparation was underway even when evidence was absent. This trust was not blind faith. It was understanding earned through observation. They had seen enough to know that visible results always lag behind invisible causes. Those who do not understand this law mistake delay for denial. They conclude that nothing is working and redouble their efforts in the wrong direction. This intensifies resistance. Resistance creates friction. Friction slows progress. Thus, the very act of forcing becomes the cause of delay. Consider the natural world. Seeds do not sprout the moment they are planted. Roots form first, unseen. Soil must be prepared. Moisture must be balanced. Temperature must be right. No amount of shouting at the ground will hasten this process. Yet when the conditions are correct, growth occurs with certainty. Human affairs are governed by a similar law. The invisible order responds not to urgency, but to harmony. Harmony is agreement between thought, emotion, and expectation. When these are aligned, movement occurs naturally. When they are in conflict, effort is wasted, correcting inner disorder rather than producing outer result. I have seen men of modest ability surpass those of great talent simply because they did not fight the order of things. They moved with it. They learned when to act and when to wait. They learned that waiting is not idleness when it is informed by understanding. It is preparation without panic. Others often describe these men as fortunate. They said things fell into place for them. What they did not see was the inner posture that made such arrangement possible. These men did not tense themselves against uncertainty. They did not treat themselves as problems to be fixed. They maintained composure when others strained. This composure allowed the invisible order to complete its work. Most people sabotage this order through constant inner argument. They argue with where they are. They condemn the present moment. They rehearse self-blame. All of this sends a signal of resistance. Life answers resistance with delay, not as punishment, but as necessity. Movement cannot proceed where there is conflict. The man who understands this law makes peace with the present without surrendering his aim. This distinction is crucial. Peace with the present is not resignation. It is recognition. Recognition that the present moment is part of a larger arrangement, not an obstacle to it. This recognition alone restores calm. Calm restores judgment. Judgment restores effectiveness. Thus, the invisible order begins to express itself outwardly as clarity, opportunity, and timely action. Others feel this change instinctively. They sense steadiness. They feel less need to oppose or challenge. Cooperation arises naturally around those who are inwardly ordered. Doors open not because they are demanded, but because resistance has been removed. This is how years are saved. A man who understands invisible order does not spend his life undoing his own impatience. He does not exhaust himself emotionally while waiting for proof. He does not abandon efforts prematurely. Over 10 years, this saves enormous energy. Over 20, it preserves health and confidence. Over 30, it determines whether life feels hostile or supportive. There is also great comfort in this understanding. When one realizes that life is not chaotic, but ordered, fear loses its authority. Fear thrives on uncertainty. Understanding dissolves it. One no longer feels abandoned during delay. One feels held within process. This law does not require belief to operate. It requires only that one stop interfering with it. Interference comes through resistance, self-condemnation, and urgency. Cooperation comes through calm expectancy and intelligent patience. Here is an affirmation that acknowledges this law without attempting to control it. There is an order working in my life, and I allow it to complete its work. Spoken calmly, this statement does not demand results. It removes obstruction. The subconscious mind responds by relaxing its grip. When the grip relaxes, movement resumes. As this practice continues, life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a sequence. Events connect, assistance appears where it is needed. Timing improves. None of this feels dramatic. It feels natural. That is how you know the law is being honored. The greatest tragedy is not that people fail, but that they struggle against a law designed to assist them. Once the struggle ends, assistance begins. This invisible order is always present. It does not need to be summoned, it needs to be trusted. When it is trusted, things do not merely happen, they fall into place. This is the first understanding. Without it, nothing else endures. With it, effort becomes lighter, waiting becomes purposeful, and life begins to reveal its quiet intelligence. And this is how the spiritual law first makes itself known, not through force, but through order recognized and allowed. I wish now to speak of the second understanding, for once a person recognizes that an invisible order exists, the next question naturally arises. How does one move in harmony with it rather than against it? The answer is found in a principle so simple that it is often ignored, yet so powerful that when practiced, it accelerates progress without strain. This principle is cooperation with life, and it is the force that turns unseen order into visible result. Most people are taught, directly or indirectly, that success is achieved through domination. They believe they must conquer circumstance, overpower difficulty, and bend life to their will. This belief produces effort, but it also produces friction. Friction consumes time. The man who spends his life forcing outcomes spends much of it repairing damage caused by force itself. Cooperation, by contrast, appears passive to the uninformed eye. Yet it is anything but passive. Cooperation is intelligent alignment with conditions as they are, rather than as one demands them to be. It is the decision to work with reality instead of arguing with it. This decision alone restores enormous power to the individual. I have observed that men who achieved much with apparent ease were not less ambitious than others. They were more discerning. They knew when effort was required and when restraint was wiser. They understood that pushing at the wrong moment does not hasten success, it postpones it. Consider the man who feels compelled to act simply because he is uncomfortable waiting. His action is driven by anxiety, not clarity. Such action often produces confusion, opposition, or reversal. He then must spend additional time correcting what haste created. Over 10 years, this pattern consumes countless hours of life. Now consider the man who cooperates with life's timing. He does not confuse stillness with stagnation. He remains attentive, observant, and prepared, but he does not interfere prematurely. When action is required, he acts decisively. When waiting is required, he waits without inner argument. This balance preserves energy and sharpens judgment. Others sense this cooperation immediately. They feel that such a man is not pushing against them. They feel no pressure in his presence. As a result, they offer assistance freely. Cooperation begets cooperation. Resistance begets resistance. This is a law as reliable as gravity. Many people misunderstand cooperation because they associate it with surrender. Surrender implies giving up aim. Cooperation implies trusting process. The aim remains intact, only the method changes. Instead of force, one employs allowance. Instead of strain, one employs alignment. The body reveals this law before the mind understands it. When a person stops resisting, the breath deepens, the shoulders drop, the muscles release. These physical signals are not accidental. They indicate that inner conflict has ceased. When conflict ceases, intelligence can operate without obstruction. Men of enduring success learned to listen to these signals. They paid attention to tension as a warning, not a badge of honor. They recognized that constant strain was evidence of misalignment. Rather than glorifying effort, they corrected direction. This is why cooperation saves years of life. A man who cooperates does not exhaust himself fighting conditions that cannot yet change. He conserves strength for moments when action will be effective. Over 20 years, this conservation preserves health. Over 30, it preserves usefulness. Others often describe such men as fortunate. They said opportunity seemed to come to them. What they did not see was the absence of resistance. Opportunity avoids conflict. It moves toward receptivity. Cooperation creates receptivity. Resistance, on the other hand, narrows perception. A resisting mind sees only obstacles. A cooperative mind sees alternatives. This difference determines whether one feels trapped or guided. I have known men who failed repeatedly, not because they lacked ability, but because they refused to cooperate with the stage they were in. They attempted to skip preparation. They resented obscurity. They rushed development. Life answered by delaying them further. When these same men learn to cooperate by learning, refining, observing, and weighting their progress, accelerated naturally, what they once tried to force arrived without struggle. Timing corrected itself. This is why the spiritual law does not respond to demand. Demand implies distrust. Distrust interrupts cooperation. Life answers trust with movement, because trust removes interference. Here is an affirmation that establishes this posture of cooperation. I move with life, and life moves with me. Spoken calmly, these words do not command. They align. The subconscious mind responds by releasing tension and restoring rhythm. Rhythm is the language life understands best. As this practice becomes habitual, you will notice that decisions feel clearer. You act with greater certainty and less doubt. You no longer feel compelled to justify timing. You trust sequence. Others feel this trust and respond accordingly. Many people fear that if they stop pushing, nothing will happen. In truth, the opposite is often the case. When pushing stops, movement begins. The energy once spent resisting becomes available for creation. This is how things begin to fall into place. Not because effort has increased, but because friction has decreased. Friction is the hidden cost of force. Cooperation removes it. When cooperation becomes your habitual posture, life ceases to feel adversarial. It feels responsive. You are no longer wrestling with events. You are participating in them. This understanding alone can save decades of life. A man who cooperates does not fight the same battles repeatedly. He learns, adjusts, and moves forward. His path may not be dramatic, but it is efficient. Efficiency over time is what builds success. This is the second great truth. The invisible order moves fastest when met with cooperation. Learn this, practice it, and you will discover that life no longer resists you because you have stopped resisting it. And when resistance ends, alignment begins. I wish now to speak of the third understanding, for this is where cooperation matures into something deeper and more decisive. A man may recognize invisible order and learn to cooperate with life, yet still wonder why certain desires remain just beyond reach. The answer lies in a principle seldom explained plainly. Outer arrangement is always the consequence of inner alignment. Life does not respond first to effort, nor even to intention. It responds to the state from which intention arises. Inner alignment is not enthusiasm, it is agreement. Agreement between what one thinks, what one feels, and what one expects. When these are in harmony, action flows without strain, and results assemble with surprising accuracy. When they are divided, effort scatters and outcomes arrive distorted or delayed. Most people live in quiet contradiction. They speak of trust while rehearsing fear. They declare confidence while expecting disappointment. They plan for success while emotionally bracing for failure. This contradiction sends mixed instruction to life. Mixed instruction produces mixed results. I have observed that men who achieved clarity of outcome did so only after achieving clarity within. They were not free of doubt, but they were no longer divided by it. They allowed doubt to exist without granting it authority. Their dominant state was one of agreement rather than conflict. Consider the man who desires advancement but secretly believes he is undeserving. His actions may appear correct, but his expectation undermines them. He hesitates at critical moments. He diminishes his own value in conversation. Others sense this immediately. Opportunity passes, not because it is withheld, but because it is not recognized as welcome. Now consider the man whose inner state is aligned. He does not demand success, but he expects usefulness. He does not force recognition, but he assumes contribution will be received. His posture is calm, his voice is steady. Others feel coherence in him. They respond with trust. Trust invites responsibility. Responsibility brings advancement. This alignment does not occur through affirmation alone. It occurs through settled belief. Settled belief is not loud. It is quiet. It does not argue with opposing thought. It simply remains present until opposition weakens through lack of attention. Many people mistake inner alignment for emotional positivity. This error leads them to suppress doubt rather than resolve division. Suppression creates strain. Resolution creates peace. Peace is the sign of alignment. The body reveals alignment before the mind can explain it. When alignment is present, the breath is natural. The muscles are relaxed. Thought moves in sequence. When alignment is absent, tension appears without clear cause. The body knows when the inner state is divided. Men of long usefulness paid attention to these signals. They corrected alignment before attempting action. They understood that action taken from disorder produces disorder, regardless of effort. This is why so many people work harder and receive less. They are correcting outward circumstances while leaving inner division untouched. This division consumes energy continuously. Over 10 years, it exhausts ambition. Over 20, it hardens into discouragement. Over 30, it becomes resignation. Alignment restores efficiency. A man in alignment does not need to force himself. He does not need constant reassurance. He moves forward with fewer corrections. Each step builds upon the last. This continuity saves years of life. Others observe alignment as confidence, but it is more accurate to call it congruence. What is spoken matches what is expected. What is expected matches what is acted upon. This congruence feels trustworthy. People respond to it instinctively. Alignment also dissolves unnecessary struggle. When inner agreement exists, external opposition diminishes. This does not mean difficulty disappears. It means difficulty is met without fragmentation. Problems are addressed one at a time instead of all at once. I have known men who spent decades pursuing goals that never settled because their inner state never stabilized. When they finally learned to align expectation with intention, progress accelerated rapidly. What had been delayed for years resolved within months. Not because life changed, but because instruction became clear. This is how time is saved. Misalignment causes repetition. Repetition without learning wastes life. Alignment allows learning to complete. Completion moves one forward. Here is an affirmation that encourages alignment without strain. My thoughts, feelings, and expectations move in agreement. Spoken calmly, this sentence does not force harmony. It invites it. The subconscious mind responds by softening extremes and reducing inner argument. As argument fades, alignment strengthens. As this practice continues, you will notice fewer inner debates. Decisions will feel simpler. You will not feel compelled to explain yourself constantly. Others will feel this clarity and respond with ease. Many people believe alignment is something achieved once. It is not. It is maintained. Maintained through awareness, honesty, and repetition. Each day offers opportunity to correct small divisions before they become large conflicts. This maintenance prevents collapse. Most breakdowns occur not from sudden catastrophe, but from prolonged misalignment. Corrected early, misalignment loses power. This is why inner alignment is the true cause of outer arrangement. Life does not organize itself around words or wishes. It organizes itself around states. When the state is coherent, arrangement follows naturally. When alignment becomes habitual, life begins to feel supportive rather than obstructive. You stop asking why things are difficult and begin noticing how often they resolve themselves. This is not chance, it is law. The man who understands this no longer fights for outcomes. He attends to alignment. Outcomes take care of themselves. This is the third great truth. When the inner state is ordered, the outer world arranges itself accordingly. And when arrangement replaces struggle, years once lost to correction are quietly returned. I wish now to speak of the fourth and final understanding, for this is where all previous insight gathers itself into a way of living rather than a way of thinking. A man may recognize invisible order, learn cooperation, and establish inner alignment, yet still feel uncertainty about when things should occur. It is here that many become impatient again and undo much of their progress. What resolves this is the understanding of rhythm, the natural timing by which life completes its arrangements. Rhythm is not delay. It is precision. Everything that endures moves according to rhythm. Seasons do not rush themselves. The tide does not arrive early because one demands it. Growth follows sequence, and sequence cannot be skipped without consequence. The man who understands rhythm no longer measures progress by speed, but by correctness. Most people exhaust themselves by fighting timing. They want results before preparation is complete. They want recognition before usefulness is proven. They want relief before understanding has settled. This impatience fractures rhythm. When rhythm is broken, life must pause to restore order. What is experienced as delay is often correction. Men of enduring success learn to respect rhythm instinctively. They did not demand outcomes on fixed schedules. They paid attention to readiness both within themselves and within circumstance. They acted when action felt clean, not when anxiety demanded motion. This discernment preserved energy and prevented costly missteps. Others often describe these men as unhurried. They seemed to arrive at opportunities at the right moment, not too early and not too late. What was unseen was their respect for sequence. They did not force doors. They waited until doors opened, and when they did, entry required little effort. Rhythm also protects against exhaustion. A man who moves against rhythm burns himself out trying to compensate. A man who moves with rhythm conserves strength. His effort accumulates instead of dissipating. Over 10 years, this difference is decisive. Over 20, it is transformative. Over 30, it determines whether life feels heavy or sustainable. The body reveals rhythm clearly. When action is taken in harmony with timing, the body feels settled. When action is premature, tension appears. Men who ignore this signal often mistake tension for urgency and push harder. Those who heed it pause and reassess. Pausing at the right moment saves years of correction later. Rhythm also governs recovery. Rest is not weakness, it is part of sequence. Many fail not because they act too little, but because they never allow completion. They move from task to task without closure. Closure restores rhythm. Rhythm restores clarity. I have known men who struggled for decades until they learned this single truth. Life does not need to be hurried. It needs to be allowed to finish its work. When they stopped forcing timing, progress accelerated. What once felt stuck began to move smoothly. This is why things appear to fall into place for some. They are not lucky, they are rhythmic. They do not interrupt life's arranging hand. They cooperate with its pace. Here is an affirmation that establishes trust in rhythm. I trust the right timing of all things in my life. Spoken calmly, this sentence dissolves impatience. It instructs the subconscious to release control where control is harmful. As control loosens, flow resumes. When this understanding settles, anxiety about the future diminishes. You no longer feel late. You no longer feel rushed. You feel present. Presence is the gateway through which rhythm operates. Others notice this immediately. They sense patience without passivity, confidence without pressure. They trust your timing because you trust it yourself. Opportunities align naturally with this trust. This is how decades are saved. A man who respects rhythm does not spend years undoing premature decisions. He does not exhaust himself correcting what haste produced. He allows life to mature before demanding result. When rhythm becomes habitual, life feels kinder not because it has changed, but because you have stopped interfering. Events connect logically. Assistance arrives naturally. Outcomes feel earned without strain. This is the fulfillment of the promise made at the beginning. The spiritual law that makes things fall into place is not mysterious. It is orderly. It requires no force, only understanding. Invisible order establishes direction. Cooperation removes resistance. Alignment clarifies instruction. Rhythm completes the work. When these are lived together, life organizes itself with surprising intelligence. Not all at once, not dramatically, but precisely. And this precision, honored daily, is what restores peace, preserves energy, and quietly returns years that would otherwise be lost to struggle. This is the law, and when you live in harmony with it, things do not merely improve, they fall into place. I will close this work with a long epilogue, not to introduce a new idea, but to settle everything that has been said into perspective, where it can quietly reshape the way a life is lived. What follows is not meant to instruct further, but to explain why this law, once understood, saves not merely effort, but years of life itself. Most people do not lose their lives through sudden catastrophe. They lose them through constant correction. They push when they should wait. They wait when they should act. They argue with circumstances instead of understanding them. They exhaust themselves attempting to force outcomes that would have arrived naturally had they not interfered. When they look back, they do not see one great failure. They see a long trail of unnecessary strain. The spiritual law you have just encountered does not remove responsibility. It removes waste. Waste of emotion, waste of thought, waste of effort, waste of time. These are the true thieves of life, and they work quietly, day after day, until decades have passed. Consider how many years are lost to impatience alone. A man becomes uneasy when results do not appear quickly. He questions himself, he questions others, he questions life. In doing so, he fractures inner alignment. That fracture produces tension. Tension clouds judgment. Clouded judgment produces error. Error demands correction. Correction consumes time. The cycle repeats. Now consider the man who understands order, cooperation, alignment, and rhythm. He does not demand speed. He demands correctness. He does not panic during silence. He listens. He does not condemn delay. He uses it. Because he does not interfere, life does not need to correct him. Progress, though quiet, is continuous. This difference alone saves 10 years of life. Add to this the years lost to emotional resistance. How many days are spent resenting what is rather than working with it? How many nights are spent rehearsing frustration, replaying conversations, imagining different outcomes? This emotional friction drains vitality without producing value. It leaves the body tired and the mind dull. The man who lives in harmony with this law does not carry such friction. He feels disappointment, but he does not rehearse it. He experiences difficulty, but he does not identify with it. Because he does not argue with life, life does not argue back. Energy is preserved. Health is protected. Clarity remains. This difference saves 20 years of life. Then consider the years lost to misalignment, saying one thing, expecting another, and fearing a third. This division splits effort, A divided mind cannot build steadily. It starts, stops, doubts, resumes, and corrects endlessly. Many people spend entire lives in motion without direction, mistaking activity for progress. The man who aligns inwardly moves less but arrives more often. His actions accumulate instead of cancel. His reputation stabilizes. His confidence deepens. His path becomes clearer, not because it is easy, but because it is coherent. This difference saves 30 years of life. When these savings combine, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels rushed. The future no longer feels threatening. The present no longer feels like an obstacle to escape. One begins to feel carried rather than chased. This is not illusion. It is the natural consequence of no longer fighting a law designed to assist. Many people misunderstand spiritual law as something mystical or distant. In truth, it is practical. It governs timing, energy, cooperation, and sequence. It rewards those who understand it and delays those who resist it, not as punishment, but as protection. Protection from premature action, protection from exhaustion, protection from irreversible error. When you look at the lives of men and women who seem to arrive at the right place at the right time again and again, you will see this law at work. They did not arrive by chance. They arrived by rhythm. They did not dominate life. They cooperated with it. They did not strain for certainty. They trusted order. Others describe them as calm, grounded, or wise. These descriptions were not compliments of personality. They were observations of alignment. Aligned people feel safe to others. Safety invites opportunity. This is why things appear to fall into place around such individuals. The pieces were always capable of fitting. Resistance was the only thing preventing it. If there is one habit that must be unlearned for this law to operate fully, it is the habit of treating yourself as a problem to fix. Self-condemnation is resistance turned inward. It disrupts alignment and delays resolution. When self-blame quiets, cooperation begins. You may notice that when you stop fighting yourself, life stops fighting you. This is not coincidence. The body understands this law instinctively. When you relax, the breath deepens. When you trust, the shoulders drop. When you stop forcing, the nervous system settles. These physical responses are confirmations that alignment has returned. Life follows the body's signal before the mind can explain it. This is why peace often arrives before answers. Peace is not the reward for resolution. It is the condition that allows resolution to occur. At some point, if you live by this law long enough, you will stop asking whether things are working. That question belongs to resistance. You will notice instead that things are connecting, responding, and unfolding with less effort than before. The absence of struggle will become more noticeable than the presence of success. You will also notice that even when difficulties arise, and they will, you meet them differently. You do not panic, you do not rush, you do not collapse inwardly. You adjust. Adjustment is the signature of mastery. Life does not demand perfection. It demands harmony. When harmony becomes habitual, life organizes itself naturally. Not always quickly, always precisely. This is why the law cannot be rushed. It must be respected. When respected, it returns that respect in the form of timing that feels right, outcomes that feel earned, and peace that does not depend on circumstance. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Struggle is not proof of effort. It is proof of resistance. Ease is not proof of laziness. It is proof of alignment. The spiritual law that makes things fall into place is not outside you. It moves through you the moment you stop interfering. When you honor order, cooperate with life, align inwardly, and trust rhythm, you do not need to manage the whole picture. Life completes it for you, and in doing so, it quietly gives you back what no success can replace: time, lived with clarity, energy preserved, and peace intact. That is the true reward of this law. I will offer one final epilogue, not as repetition, but as deepening, for some truths require more than one resting place in the mind before they are fully lived. What follows is meant to help you recognize this law in motion, so that you no longer wonder whether it is working, but instead notice how often it already has. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, when a person realizes that much of what once felt difficult was never meant to be forced. This realization does not arrive with excitement. It arrives with relief. One looks